You've probably sat behind a semi-truck on the highway and thought that thing is massive. Now imagine 3 of them, chained together, doing 60 miles per hour across a road that doesn't see another car for an hour in either direction. That's a road train. And somehow only one country on Earth decided this was a good idea. Not Russia, not Canada, not the United States, which moves more freight than anywhere else on the planet. Just Australia. The question isn't whether road trains are impressive. Everyone agrees they are. The question is why they exist at all, and why nowhere else ever built them. The answer reaches back further than trucks, further than highways, and further than anyone expects, all the way to Afghan camel caravans. A botched national railway system and one teenage mechanic working alone in the middle of the desert who accidentally changed global logistics forever. Before getting into why they exist, it helps to understand what a road train actually is, because most people get this wrong. The common assumption is that it's just a really long truck. An oversized semi with a bit of extra trailer bolted on the back. But that's not what it is, and the difference matters. A road train is a heavy prime mover, the cab and engine unit, pulling not one freight trailer, but 2, 3, or sometimes 4 full trailers chained together as a single vehicle. One driver, one rig, one continuous unit stretching up to 50 meters down the road. Think of it less like a truck and more like a freight train that decided rails were optional. And legally, it isn't just a longer version of a standard semi. It's an entirely separate vehicle category operating under its own federal permit framework. Configurations that are completely routine in the Australian outback would be flatly illegal in all 50 American states simultaneously. The closest thing the United States permits is called a turnpike double, 2 48-foot trailers behind a single cab, legal in a handful of western states like Nevada and Wyoming. That combination is still roughly half the length of a full Australian road train. In Australia, road trains operate primarily across 4 regions: Western Australia, South Australia, Queensland, and the Northern Territory. These are the vast inland and northern stretches where distances are brutal and infrastructure is thin. But here's something most people don't expect. Road trains are banned from urban and suburban roads entirely. They cannot legally enter any Australian city without special permits and dedicated escort vehicles. When a road train approaches a populated area, it pulls into a designated stop, decouples the extra trailers, and the cargo continues on a standard truck. The monster only exists in the spaces between cities. So the vehicle is real, the scale is real, and the legal framework around it is real. The question that remains is how something this specific, this enormous, and this tightly regulated came to exist in one country and nowhere else. To understand where road trains came from, you have to go back to a time before trucks existed at all, and look at how Australia moved freight across the desert when no other method worked. In the 19th century, British settlers pushing into the interior quickly discovered that horses could not survive the heat. The Australian outback is not just hot. It is a sustained, grinding, killing heat that breaks animals not built for it. So the colonial government looked elsewhere and landed on camels. Between the 1840s and 1900s, Australia imported thousands of camels, along with their handlers, men from Afghanistan and what is now Pakistan, who understood how to work these animals across brutal terrain. By 1900, there were over 12,000 working camels moving across the desert, carrying mail, food, building materials, and heavy mining equipment to places no road reached. Here's the detail that matters. In America and elsewhere, freight animals typically worked individually or in small separate teams, pulling their own wagons. In Australia, these cameleers operated in massive connected convoys, long continuous lines of animals and cargo moving together under a single handler. One line, one operator, everything linked. That specific operational logic, Moving freight as one long connected unit rather than many separate ones became embedded in how Australians thought about desert transport. Then in 1934, the government imported a British AEC military truck for outback trials. It cut freight costs by 80% almost immediately. The camel economy collapsed overnight. The handlers lost their livelihoods, and somewhere between 12,000 and 15,000 camels were simply released into the desert. They thrived. Australia now has the largest wild camel population on Earth, a strange footnote to an economic disruption that happened in a single decade. The camels were gone, but the convoy logic was not. The mindset of linking freight together in one continuous moving line, one operator controlling the whole thing, did not disappear when the animals did. It was simply waiting for a machine capable of carrying it forward. That machine was coming, and it would be built by one man from parts nobody else wanted. The man who built the modern road train wasn't an engineer with a corporate budget or a government contract. He was a bush mechanic who grew up in the Northern Territory and got his driver's license at age 11. His name was Kurt Johansson, and the machine he built in the early 1950s didn't just solve a local problem. It created a vehicle category that still defines an entire continent's freight system today. Johansson bought a surplus World War II Diamond T tank carrier, the kind of heavy hauler the military used to move armored vehicles across rough terrain. He modified it, expanded it, and built a working multi-trailer rig he named Bertha. But the vehicle itself wasn't the breakthrough. The breakthrough was the engineering problem he solved along the way. The problem was this: connecting multiple trailers behind a single cab sounds straightforward until you put that combination on an outback road with tight river crossings, uneven ground, and long sweeping curves. Standard trailer connections don't track cleanly. The second trailer cuts corners differently than the first. The third cuts corners differently again. At scale, that cascading drift makes the whole rig dangerous, unpredictable, and destructive to anything at the edge of the road. Johansson's solution was self-tracking trailers, built using converted U.S. Army gun carriers. The engineering meant that every trailer in the chain followed the exact path of the one in front of it. Not approximately, exactly. The last trailer in a 4-unit road train traced the same line as the front axle of the cab. That single mechanical insight is what made long multi-trailer combinations safe to operate at speed on public roads. Without it, road trains as they function today could not exist. Bertha ran for 2 million miles. That's nearly triple the working lifespan of a modern American semi-truck. Commercial road train operations were running by 1953. The government caught up with the regulations later. One man. Surplus parts. A problem nobody else had needed to solve. The solution is still rolling across the Australian outback every single night. Kurt Johansson solved the engineering problem. But the deeper question is why Australia needed that solution in the first place, when every other large country with vast distances simply built more railway lines and called it done. The answer is one of the most expensive infrastructure mistakes in colonial history. When Australia's separate colonies built their railway networks in the 1800s, nobody coordinated the track gauge. New South Wales chose standard gauge. Victoria chose broad gauge. Queensland chose narrow gauge. Each colony built its own system in isolation. And when those systems eventually met at the borders, the trains couldn't cross. Every shipment had to be completely unloaded, moved across the platform, and reloaded onto a different train on the other side. Every single time. During World War II, troops moving across the country had to stop and switch trains mid-journey. In a war, because of track width. The rest of the world had solved this decades earlier. The United States completed its transcontinental railroad in 1869. Canada finished its national line in 1885. Russia pushed its Trans-Siberian connection through by 1916. Australia's unified standard gauge network wasn't completed until 1982. The critical north-south link between Adelaide and Darwin, connecting the bottom of the continent to the top, only opened in 2004. For over a century, the northern half of Australia had no functional national rail connection at all. Where other countries solved vast distances with railways, Australia solved it with trucks. In the 1960s, the government launched the Beef Road Scheme, pouring millions into upgrading outback highways, bridges, and cattle routes specifically to support heavy freight movement. But here's the detail that separates Australia from every other country. In the United States, in Europe, in Canada, trucks are designed and regulated to fit existing roads. In Australia, the roads were deliberately designed and built to fit the trucks. The Stuart Highway runs straight and wide for hundreds of kilometers specifically because road trains need it to. That inversion, building the road around the vehicle rather than the vehicle around the road, is the precise reason this vehicle class exists in one country and nowhere else on Earth. It's easy to think of road trains as an Australian peculiarity, a local solution to a local problem, interesting to look at, irrelevant beyond the outback. That framing is completely wrong. Start with food. In the Barkly Tableland, one of Australia's most productive cattle regions, road trains pulling triple livestock trailers move tens of thousands of head of cattle every year. That beef doesn't stay in Australia. It reaches markets across Asia and the Middle East, feeding supply chains that stretch across a dozen countries. The road train is the first link in that chain, and without it, none of the rest of it moves. Then there's iron. Deep in the Pilbara region of Western Australia, massive ore road trains haul raw iron from mines to coastal ports. That iron becomes steel. That steel becomes skyscrapers, shipping containers, industrial equipment, and the car sitting in your driveway. The connection between a 50-meter truck on a red dirt road in Western Australia and a building going up in Shanghai is direct and short. But the most significant material is lithium. Western Australia mines approximately half of the world's lithium supply. All of it comes out of remote inland operations, and all of it begins its journey to global markets on the back of a road train moving from mine to port. The lithium in the laptop you're watching this on, the electric vehicle charging in a garage somewhere, the smartphone in your pocket, it almost certainly started its journey behind one of these rigs. Alice Springs sits in the geographic center of Australia, roughly equidistant from every coastline. It receives the majority of its food, fuel, and supplies exclusively by road train. There is no alternative. The road train isn't a convenience for that town. It is the town's connection to everything. This is the part that reframes the whole picture. Road trains don't just serve Australia. They are load-bearing infrastructure inside the global supply chain. Most people never see them. Almost everyone depends on them. What looks like an oversized truck is actually the product of failed railways, desert survival logistics, a camel convoy mindset, and one mechanic's backyard engineering. Every other country that faced vast distances built trains or adapted trucks to existing roads. Australia did neither. It built the roads around the trucks, then built trucks that no rulebook anywhere else would allow. That's not an accident. That's a century of compounding infrastructure decisions, each one making the next one inevitable. The sound of a road train on the Stuart Highway at 3 in the morning isn't excess. It's history moving freight.